Welcome to a new edition of To Net Zero With. I'm Martina Bassan. I'm very pleased to be joined today by 3 members of the European Net Zero Alliance, ENZA in short. ENZA, for those of you who are not familiar with the name, is an alliance that gathers different associations. It was created in 2021, and all these associations are working together with policymakers on cost-effective, practical and proven solutions to achieve climate neutrality by 2050. So the purpose of the association is really to promote and advocate what is called system integration. In other words, cross-sectoral and cross-vectoral solution to achieve this common goal. Let's start this conversation with my guests today. Let me introduce them. We have Aurélie Beauvais, Managing Director of Euroheat and Power, Pedro Diaz, Secretary General of SolarHeat Europe, and Giulia Cancian, Secretary General of EBA, European Biogas Association. Let's start with the first question. So one of the points that are addressed by ENZA, but the Net Zero Alliance, is that there are many dimensions of the energy transition. How is your specific sector contributed to this successful energy transition? Can you tell us more, Aurélie?
No, with pleasure, and thank you for welcoming me and us to discuss about this important topic that is indeed the renewable transition. And I think there is a broad consensus in general on the fact that we need more renewables everywhere. Renewables must increase in all sectors in order to achieve climate neutrality. We often talk of a renewable-based energy system, and there is broad agreement on that. The discussion which needs to be developed further now is to shed light on the diversity of solutions that there are when we talk about renewables, and also on the how-to parameter, which is often overlooked, meaning how we can really have a functioning and secure system with all those different sources that are going to play together. When we talk about the diversity, what's very important is to recall that renewables are not only electric, and it tends to be a strong focus today in policy making, but renewables, it's also renewable heat sources, and that's why I'm also very happy that Pedro and Giulia are here today. And we want to shed light, ENZA wants to shed light also on this broader range of renewables. And the second element is this debate on flexibility and system efficiency, which is very important. So how can we as ENZA member contribute to making a more flexible and secure energy system? Pedro will tell you more about thermal storage, for example, which is a very important feature. So in general, this notion of multi-energy system is really key to a sound renewable transition, in my perspective.
Thank you, Aurélie. Giulia, maybe you want to add something on that as well?
No, absolutely. So Aurélie mentioned the diversity of the options that we should put in place, and the need for flexibility. And indeed, when looking at the process of replacing fossil fuels with renewable energy sources in the heating and cooling sector and the transport sector, this is pivotal, specifically also because these two sectors, so heating and cooling and transport, are lagging behind compared to power generation when it comes to renewable energy utilization and demand. And they are also very important. So heating corresponds to 50%, half of the energy. And transport is actually increasing in terms of energy demand in these years. And this is also possibly the trajectory that we are going to witness for the future. So when it comes to the approach of planning the transition, we must make sure that everybody is on board. So solutions needs to be the most efficient to tackle decarbonization, but they also need to be inclusive of urban areas as well as rural areas. Also, green vectors are key. So green vectors such as biomethane need to be available to green the existing infrastructure, so the gas grid. And finally, transport must be able to count on an array of different solutions, including, for example, sustainable biofuels and biomethane.
Pedro, maybe you want to also to add something on that. What's your point of view?
I go into the same direction that Aurélie and Giulia were. We need diversity of solutions, so there is no silver bullet, and that's important. So we need the solutions that are available We need readily available solutions. So we need to speed up the transition with the solutions available while we look into additional solutions that can provide new concepts, new answers to challenges for hard-to-abate sectors later on, and so on. In this regard, in terms of the main challenges and available solutions, heating and cooling is critical. It was mentioned it's 50% of the energy, the total energy demand. We have seen over the last decades an exceptional development of renewable electricity, wind and PV, for instance, and we need to take those examples, learn from those examples, and try to replicate in the heating and cooling sector, so that we can speed up the transition. And as it was mentioned, heating and cooling has a critical role also in sector integration. And that's where we have solutions like thermal energy storage that have been overlooked, and they are these kind of solutions are essential for integrating the power and the heat sector, but also to give flexibility to the energy system. So, and we are talking about solutions that are available in Europe, that are not expensive, so very competitive, and that can be quickly deployed. So thermal energy storage is one of the critical aspects that we need to work further in the future in order to promote the sector integration and a faster transition.
Thank you, Pedro. Let's dig in a little bit more on this available solution that you mentioned. Maybe Julia, you want to start with this?
Biogas and biomethane at the moment are the cheapest and most scalable form of renewable gases that are available today. And they can substitute directly fossil fuels using the same kind of infrastructure. They can be easily stored and deployed across the whole energy system. In addition, CO2 separated during biogas upgrading can be seen as another product and can be used, for example, in methanation or power-to-gas concepts, which are also part of the flexibility options that needs to be delivered to the system. In general, the impact of the sector goes far beyond the energy use, at least when it comes to biomethane and biogas, because it offers also efficient pathways for organic waste management and abatement of methane emissions in the farming sector, as well as provision, for example, of organomineral fertilizers to allow also rural areas to be part of the climate transition.
Thank you. Aurélie?
One of the key benefits of district heating and cooling, which is our sector, we are quite unique in our ability to integrate, on the one hand, this diversity of solutions, so renewable heat sources like solar thermal, geothermal, or bioenergy, biomethane in some cases. We can use recovered heat from data centers, supermarkets, hospitals, to defossilize also buildings in cities, and we can also use renewable electricity. So this multi-energy system dimension that is at the core of ENZA is very well reflected in our technology. And by doing that, in a way, we propose to the EU and to cities a solution that enables to use all local resources, so to free up also renewable electricity sources or uses for other sector. It's also something that is very inclusive. It can adapt to every local situation, so the geothermal capacities of Hungary or the biomethane planning of Czech Republic, for example. So very inclusive and also contributing to this flexibility aspect, notably via thermal storage and power to heat with large-scale heat pumps.
Pedro, would you have something to add on that as well?
Yes, from our side, we have one part of our technology of solar heating and cooling that is applied in buildings directly. So these are the smaller applications. But we also have large applications used in district heating, for instance, or even for industry. So we're talking about a wide range of solutions from, let's say, a 2 kilowatt system for a house in Greece to systems with over 100 megawatt in Denmark, so also geographically. We also want to point out the value for our security because we are producing our own energy, but with technologies that are produced in Europe, and where we are not dependent for the energy generation, but also for the installation of the equipment of imports of critical raw materials or other important components of these systems. And we are a EU-based technology. So we have manufacturers from Finland to Cyprus, and there is a huge capacity to grow. So there is available capacity to quickly deploy more of these systems into the market, but also due to the characteristics of the sector, the overall production capacity can be quickly ramped up. So security coupled with economic value and a strong local basis, as it was already mentioned, because that's one of the particularities of heat. So we need to produce where it is needed, and this is locally. Just to mention that another advantage is at the same time that these are competitive systems. So talking about stable and low costs during the operation of the entire system, and during the calculation for the lifetime, these are competitive even today. We think it's important to realize how much capacity already exists for thermal energy storage. So just for solar thermal, and we are not the only technology with thermal storage coupled, but each solar thermal system has a thermal energy storage incorporated, and we have more than 10 million systems in Europe. So we have much more storage capacity in Europe than we think. It's in thermal energy, not in power, but we can even explore this opportunity more. So there is a huge opportunity there for everyone to explore in the system integration and adding flexibility to the energy system.
Let's give some example. I'm sure our viewers are interested in some concrete example. Do you have a flagship project?
Yes, we have many. So the difficulty is to choose one. So while our main segment are buildings, the use of solar heat for industry and for district heating, so larger scale systems, is growing very quickly. And just to give you an example, a couple of years ago, the larger system for industry we had in Europe was 4 megawatts. And now we are already building systems of 20 megawatts in Croatia or 30 megawatts in Spain for industry. When it gets to district heating, we even have larger systems. So for instance, in Netherlands, there is now a new system being developed in Groningen that is going to serve 10,000 inhabitants with 37 megawatts. So it's one of the larger systems for district heating, solar district heating worldwide. These systems, and for instance, coupled with district heating, also offer some of them seasonal thermal storage capacity. So there is a lot of good things happening, new ambitious projects coming out, and we expect that this will continue to ramp up.
Aurélie, maybe you have also a flagship project that you would like to share with us?
Of course, I mean, just like Pedro, many. Maybe the one I wanted to highlight for this video was the Tagoat district system in Ireland, which is now harvesting recovered heat from a data center. And this is something that is gaining increasing recognition. We know that data centers in Europe, a lot of them have commitments already to be 100% supplied by renewable. And data center also emit a lot of surplus heat. So de facto, this surplus heat is becoming renewable heat that we can harvest. And in Ireland, so there was this collaboration between the Amazon data center and the local energy council. So they connected the surplus heat from the data center to the nearby building area, and now it is heating 47,000 square meter of public buildings, 3,000 square meter of commercial spaces, and 135 apartments, so more than 400 people that benefit from that. And this is only the first phase of the project. That's the very early phase until 2024, and then they will expand it even further. so that it can supply even more than 1,000 people. So I think this is very interesting. It is 100% supplied, this district heating system, by the data center recovered heat, which is upgraded with a heat pump. And it also works together with a thermal storage facility, and the heat pump, which recovers the heat, is also activating itself depending on the system need, so also functioning off-peak, for example. So this is a very nice example of the synergies we want to showcase at ENZA.
Yeah, many benefits of system integration indeed, and especially when we have this local example that show that system integration works really well at local level. If you could pick up an example as well, a project.
Absolutely. Actually, there are, as for other technologies, a lot of multiple biomethane and biogas projects that are delivering on energy system integration and system flexibility in general. But if you allow me, I would like to give you a glance into the future. So as EBA, we are currently involved in a project. It's called Biomethane. It's a brand new one. This includes 5 demonstration projects in different countries that are going to demonstrate innovative ways to produce biomethane in a more efficient way. So the technology involved is methanation, and this basically includes combining biogas with green hydrogen and green electricity to increase biomethane production and also reduce the cost of production. And the main benefit of these technologies is basically that they can provide high complementarity to an energy system with a high penetration rate of variable renewables and variable electricity in general, so that they can store green electricity and to use it when there's most need for that, without the need for expensive storage options, for example.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. I have a last question for you, for my guests today. Could you tell me, regulatory-wise, is there missing something? Do you have all we need? What's your point of view on that already?
Well, if we had all we need, we wouldn't need to join forces, of course. I think the renewable transition is already well underway, in particular for electricity, where Pedro mentioned the great work that has been done for solar and wind, and it's a great European success story. But we miss the same kind of success story for renewable heat and sustainable heat sources. The picture for heating and cooling transition is much bigger, and I hope we have demonstrated that with these short interventions today. And for renewable heat sources, for flexibility, thermal storage, for more projects like the Tagoat district heating system, there are very specific needs for financing, for the de-risking of the infrastructure, to provide also more visibility to local players, empower local authorities to develop such projects. And for that, we do believe it's about time to have a sound heating and cooling framework, a European framework that maybe builds on some of the areas of the strategy from 2016, but is much more ambitious and efficient in promoting clean heat solutions.
Let's look at the future. What would you like to have?
The REPowerEU set a bit the pathways towards rollout of our sector and to reach 35 billion cubic meters of biomethane by 2030. And this is quite important. We are hoping to see this target anchored in a binding legislation, and the recent vote in the Parliament on the gas decarbonisation package was a first very good step in this direction. Yet the road is still long, so we're hoping to see good developments in this direction. For us also to be able to roll out our sector at the capacity that will be needed for the future, permitting and authorizations are absolutely paramount. And at the moment, they remain among the toughest bottleneck for our sector. In fact, permitting time ranges from 1 to 8 years in Europe. And this is absolutely not consistent with reaching a high capacity for the sector in 2030. Finally, view the complexity of the sector that I represent today. I think that we need to make sure that the environmental dossiers and the energy ones are also as coherent as possible, because we need to prove the necessary compliance with sustainability requirements, but at the same time, we need to make sure that these requirements can be operationalized easily by the whole value chain.
Pedro, last word on that?
I would like to point something that is very important. Heat being a local issue, the role of local authorities is critical, and we need to empower local authorities. So they need the support to have the expertise in-house or the support for developing their strategies for decarbonizing their locally, especially heating and cooling. They need the financial resources also to do that, and they need the political voice in this debate, because this debate is done very much between Brussels and the capitals. So we need to involve the local authorities in this, and that doesn't depend so much from Brussels, depends from the member states and from the national governments to do so. So political involvement, technical and financial resources so that they can implement these strategies, and this will address many of the issues we are facing today because of this specificity of being a local topic. Another question is bankability. So we already referred the good examples from renewable electricity, which means that today there is a lot of information in the financing system about wind and PV, for instance. Heat doesn't have yet that, let's say, capital of data, of information about that helps to reduce the risk of these investments. To give you an example, it's harder to finance a 3 million euros project than a 30 million euros one, because for the bank and for the workload, they prefer to go for the larger one. But we need to do a lot of these 3 million, 5 million euros projects. So we need the instruments to facilitate, to create better bankability for this kind of renewable projects. And these different points that we're discussing need to be discussed, need to be addressed at European and national level and local level, as already was mentioning, in a strategy. So looking ahead, getting together these different levels, the main players, and develop a long-term vision for the decarbonization of heating and cooling. So to have a strategy at European level, that is essential.
Thank you. So we need instruments, we need awareness raising, we need visibility, attention from the policymakers. This is also why we're doing these videos, to raise attention, to have more visibility on what we need, right? Thank you. Thank you for joining us today, for your precious insight, and thank you to our viewers as well for watching us. Maybe just a reminder for those of you, do not hesitate to have a look to our website, netzeroalliance.eu, and to our LinkedIn page as well, where there are a lot of projects that are actually showcased, and there are many examples. Thank you again, and please do tune in again.